Welcome to r/entitled people, where this crazy woman wreaks as much havoc on the ski slopes as she possibly can. Entitled Mum wants my child discounts at the ski hill where I work. I am so lucky that I get to work a dream part-time job teaching little kids how to ski. It's the cutest thing I've ever seen, and I love seeing them smile the first time I take them up the bunny hill at the end of a lesson. Seriously, if you can get this job, get it. I also happen to get a very good employee discount, which is nice because after a full day, 6-ish lessons, I'm exhausted. Kids are fun, but I'm tall, so holding them upright while walking backwards in the nutcase tilts my expert boots have does a number on my back. I like to reward myself with a chocolate bar, a hot dog, and a pop after a full day of work, using the aforementioned amazing discounts while I wait for my mum to come and pick me up. It had been a nice, warmish day, like -10 to -5 degrees Celsius and sunny all day long, so I had a full day of lessons with hyperactive youngsters. It was so busy that I hadn't bothered taking anyone up to the top of the hill, as even in my first lesson, the instructor fast lane was a bit too long, and it just got worse as the day went on. Also, the kids after my first lesson were very young, and some of them had never skied before, so I wasn't holding them back from anything, just trying to get across how insanely busy it was. I think everyone on a 100-kilometer radius was on the hill and booking last-minute lessons. Needless to say, the cafeteria was just as packed. I was still standing in line for my hot dog when I got my mum's text saying she was parking. I should preface this by saying there were more instructors this year than there were coats for the instructors, so I was borrowing one from one of the managers on vacation, leading to a complete confusion among parents because there was a name tag on it that obviously wasn't my name, and I had to turn it in after my last lesson every day, meaning I was wearing my yellow striped jacket that I think is actually a child's extra large because of how short it is. But it was secondhand, is an expensive brand and fits, so who cares? I finally get to the checkout and grab my chocolate bar as I hand the cashier my employee badge, which looks very similar to a seasonal pass, so that she can apply my discounts. I should also mention that the cafeteria area is small, so we were packed like sardines. But it wasn't so near the cashiers, so I'm not sure why this lady was standing close enough to me to read the discount on the bill I was handed. I'm paranoid and always check it before leaving. Big mistake. This woman shoves her kid upright into me and hands her her card, saying, "You pay," then turns to the cashier and says, "We want the child discount," in a sickly sweet voice. I'm confused. The cashier is confused. The other instructors in front of me are confused. We are a ski hill known for our ski school. It would go out of business if there was a child discount. The cashier finally says, "We don't have a child discount." "Yes, you do," the lady says, shoving her terrified kid, my guess is 9 years old, towards the counter. She then points at me. "She got the child discount." "I'm sorry, Mom, but she works here." "No, she doesn't." The lady points to the other instructors. "They do. This child is not even old enough to work here." I kinda nod and shrug and eat my hot dog. This isn't my problem, at least I didn't think so, and I wasn't quite ready to leave yet, as I needed some hands to get my skis into our car. I then go and stand by a wall, because there was no sitting space left, as the cashier brought up the total. "Where's the discount?" the lady said. "I told you, there is no discount," the cashier said calmly. The lady then waved her arms like a mad person, pointing at me, stuffing my face. "She got one. My daughter should get one too. She works here again." "No, she does not." I finally get annoyed with this and tell her that I do, in fact, work here as an instructor. "No, you do not. You are too young to work here, and anyone can see that you are lying. You're not wearing an instructor's coat." "Yeah, because I clocked out." "See, you aren't working. I want the child discounts." "There is no child discounts." "Then what discount did she get?" She points an accusatory finger at me. The cashier is getting annoyed at this point. "The employee one." "But she said she isn't working." Wait, sorry, is this woman stupid? Just because an employee isn't on shift, surely they can still get the staff discount, what? At this point, the people behind her are pretty upset, and some are telling her to pay and move on. The lady starts pointing at my employee card that's hanging between my pop and chocolate, and starts saying that it's just like her kids pass. I'm now at the end of my wits, and show her where it says, "employee" on the card. She turns red, then demands that I give it to her for her child to use. I simply inform her that I'm not allowed to share it with anyone, and I leave. Before you ask, I've got no idea what happened next. I applied late, part of why I didn't get my own jacket, and didn't know if this needed to be reported or not. But no one got hurt, and I assume she paid and went on her unmerry way. I never saw her again. I'm honestly not even sure what to say at the end of that story. Really? Even after seeing the word employee on the card, she still tries to make up some weird excuse to validate her logic? Like, come on. I mean, really? She thinks that staff are only allowed to use staff discounts when they're on shift. What? That doesn't make any sense. If you're working, then you're not going to be buying things at the cafeteria, are you? Oh, so weird. Now moving on to the second story of today's episode. When my father fired an abuser from his company. Around 8 years ago, my dad fired a guy working at his company that we'll call Joe. He was a bit of a jerk, but did his job well, so no one really complained. From what me and my dad had heard, he tried to join the military after high school, but washed out of basic, and he'd been a military wannabe ever since. We're talking the big guy with a raised 70s Ford pickup, with the rattle can camo paint job, loud exhaust, girls' silhouette pin-ups in the rear window and on the mud flaps, a rifle rack in the cab, blanket-wrapped bench sheets, and a CB radio antenna that was way too high. Joe was married too, and she was a very nice woman. Let's call her Mary for the story. She came in with homemade blueberry muffins for everyone on some holidays. The rumor was that she'd only married Joe because she'd gotten pregnant by him, and her family pressured her into it. Lots of church families in my area are like that. Joe wasn't exactly a model employee. In fact, he was a major show-off. He'd brag about his truck a lot, mocked anyone who drove anything but a truck or muscle car, and seemed to have something against wearing deodorant. But he always came to work on time, never underperformed, always lended a hand with heavy lifting, and never drove drunk. My dad even went to the rifle range with him a few times, and they liked to talk about cars together on occasion, but they weren't really friends. Joe also knew how to party. If he had a designated driver, he'd get as drunk as he could any chance he got, but he'd still be at work the next morning, hungover, and wearing sunglasses with a coffee in hand. We kept aspirin in the office for just such occasions. One day, my dad and I went out to lunch and got sandwiches from a local place nearby. While eating, Mary walked in with Joe's son. She was wearing sunglasses as an attempt to cover quite a swollen black eye, but we could still see it from the side. She saw us and quickly left, looking scared. After this, there was a string of similar incidents, with people seeing Mary around town looking like she had bruises. And not just her, but Joe's son too. Another guy in the office had a son the same age as Joe's, and would regularly hear from the kid that Joe's son looked like he'd been in a fight or something, and the kid was always angry and lashing out. Eventually, my dad invited Mary to lunch, and pretended that he'd invited Joe too, so she'd show up. When she got there, my dad sat her down and privately asked her what was going on. I was there too, and saw Mary turn into a sobbing mess. Joe would regularly get drunk and hit her at home, and his son tried to stop him many times, which is how he ended up beaten as well. My dad flared up and looked as furious as the day my mother had beaten me, and he threatened to have her arrested. He asked Mary why she didn't leave Joe, and she said that her family knew about what was going on and kept telling her to stick it out for her son's sake. This made my dad even more upset, because he tried the same with my mother and had to leave her anyway because she never got better. My dad told Mary that she needed to leave regardless of what her family thought, because it wasn't worth it. Mary just nodded while crying and finally said she was done. My dad called his lawyer and asked him to help Mary in secretly filing for divorce, and he was happy to help her after hearing her story. Joe soon ended up in jail because the next time he hit Mary, she finally called the police. Then she packed her things and left him while he was locked up. Her family didn't support her, so my dad took her in for a while, and he even hired her as an employee so she could update her resume and have an income during the divorce, since she spent years as a stay-at-home wife. When Joe got out of jail and showed up to work, he was escorted to my dad's office and told he no longer had a job, and he was told exactly why. Joe made no excuses for himself. He just returned his name badge and walked out the door. With my dad's backing, Joe didn't fight Mary in the divorce and gave her full custody of his son. Mary and her son left town after about a year and never came back. Joe stayed in the area for a while working as a tow truck driver, but my dad made it clear that he was not to come near his business, and he didn't. Last any of us heard, Joe joined a militia of some sort and moved to another city. We haven't seen him since. Wow, your dad, OP, is an absolute legend, and I hope he knows that. That's actually incredible what he's just done there. That's insane. I mean, he's literally helping Mary out more than her own family. and her son as well. There's two different things going on here. First of all, your dad's amazing for even getting involved in the first place, and the outcome is incredible. And a lot of that, let's be honest, all of that is down to him. Without him doing what he did, Mary and her son would probably still be with Joe. Let's be realistic. Second of all, her family abandoning her after that, recommending that she stays with Joe even after seeing the torture that she's going through. Are they crazy? It's so weird to me how people like your dad can exist, OP, and how people like Mary's family can exist. I don't get it. Like, that's your daughter. I'm thinking of Mary's dad here. That's your daughter.